If China is a communist country, how is it possible that it's rich like that? Hi everyone, welcome back to Unpopular Opinion. I'm Alberto and every day I learn something new and I share it with you. And today we're gonna answer a question that haunted my mind for such a long time. That is why China, despite being a communist country in theory, is that rich. We're gonna see a little of historical background and then we're gonna see all the factors that affected not only the economic growth but also all the social inequality that is still very relevant in the country. As I said, we're gonna start with a little of history, and probably you heard about a very famous figure called Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong was the leader and the ruler of China for such a long period of time, and he took control over the country by winning the civil wars against the nationalists, if I'm correct. He was never elected by the population. He just took control of the country as a dictator. And you have to keep in mind that back then China was not a technologically advanced country, but it was a farming area with just farmers, so they found the state over that. But Mao Zedong wanted to put his ideology first. That's why they eliminated the private property. That at that point it was not about enterprises and companies, but just about farming. Okay, so you could not own your own farm, and this was an important a signature of the communist ideology. And then there was the isolationism. For example, they were restricting the trade with what was outside, so forget the globalization, they were just relying on their own resources. And then there was a very important period in the Mao Zedong era that really affected negatively, of course, the country. That was the Great Leap Forward. The Great Leap Forward was intended to quickly turn the Chinese economy into a more industrialized one. They wanted to boost the advancement of technology and industrial production. But by doing this, they first neglected all the agricultural sector. In practical terms, they were full of products that then they were not able to sell because they were even isolated country, so they had all these engines, I don't remember, but a lot of stuff, but they didn't know what to do with that. And at the same time, since they neglected the agriculture, they didn't have enough food to provide to all the population. That's why many people lost their lives. But since things were not going that well, at some point the population rebelled and it started the era of the reforms with Deng Xiaoping. Probably you know this family name. In any case, now they created the socialist state with a capitalist economy. What does it mean? It means that there is a state that has the control of the most important industries that are key to the country, for example the energy and the banking. But at the same time they welcomed the foreign investors, the private investment, so you could finally own your own company, your own enterprise, but only in the sectors that were not considered strategic for the Communist Party. And they started to make some reforms for the rural areas, and they start also to create the industry in the way that now we know. They wanted to replace the cheap labor with high skills experts and engineers, and soon we're gonna talk about all these factors. Okay, in this part of the video I want to explain you why China is getting so strong about technology, innovation, progress, and is overcoming all the old superpowered countries like America, Russia, and so on. Basically, as I said, they have this state this communist party that controls the strategic sectors, but at the same time they drive the investment, so they can do a kind of long-term planning that all the other countries, all the other democracies cannot afford. Okay, think about a party in my country, in Italy, but in France, in Germany, they have a short period of time to make their politics, their policies, because after 5 years they're gonna change the government, or I mean there are gonna be so many problems because we are in a democracy, and this will slow down the progress of a country. While the China, since there is still the Communist Party controlling the economics, they can think in the long term. They can decide what kind of investment to do from now to 10 years, and this boosts a lot the economics and the growth. For example, they have these special economic zones that, like Shenzhen, that is a famous city, probably you heard about, that it's something that exists also in Europe, but they are not that efficient. And they're basically areas where basically the laws of economics, taxations, and so on, they work in a different way, making it easier for company to operate there. And in this way, they created these hubs of innovation in progress that at the end they are driving the country. And then they focused a lot on the education, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's why they are the smartest of the world. I mean, we know that. And also the globalization. They started to take knowledge and the know-how from other countries. Think about when there was the program where Chinese people were sent to America to learn at universities, to then bring that knowledge to China. And I think it was Donny that at some point it closed this program, because I mean China was getting superior, so it didn't make sense anymore. And then they were using this knowledge to make advance the country, and they were also exporting a lot. That's why most of the things that we have here, it's from China, because they're probably the largest exporters of the world. So this explains why China is a very rich country despite being communist. But now we're gonna talk about the disequality, the inequality amongst all the area of the population. For example, there is a huge disparity between the people living in the cities and people living in the rural areas. And by this disparity, I mean that even the health care, okay, all the social services, people that live in the countryside, they don't have access to that. So more than a communism is a oligarchy where there are few peoples that concentrate all the money within their hands, and the rest of the people are just not provided with the most basic resources to fulfill their needs. And there is also, as I said, since they want to boost this long-term investment driven by the state itself, it's not that we can say the progress and the richness of the country is spread all around the population. It's not like that. That it goes against the communist idea that is at the basis of Karl Marx and so on. So all of this to what I want to do with this video was basically make you understand that even if China is a communist country in theory, by definition, at the end they don't act like that. It's more about a dictatorship with some advantages, because they're boosting the economics with a level that Europe cannot afford, and even America lately. But at the same time, they decide to who give more money and to who give less money. And the freedom, the purity, not the purity. Oh, the poverty. The poverty are big problems in this country because the state, even if it doesn't, even if it controls the economy, so there is not a completely free market like mostly in Europe and so on. At the same time, they don't distribute the progress and the money, the food, in a very, we can say, proportional way. I mean, compared to the needs, but more compared to what are the long-term ideas that they want to pursue. In other terms, it's a capitalist country, but with a dictatorship. So every time you heard that China is a communist country, but they are very, very good. No, they are rich, they have an incredible economic growth, but there is a lot of disequality, and this is against the communist ideology itself that I don't support, but they don't do neither. So they're just a communist by definition, but at the end, they act like capitalist. Capitalist, but more like kings, like more a monarchy or oligarchy. And that's why this country is going so good, so well, and we're going so bad. Thank you for following me. I hope you learned something more, and see you very, very soon.